What if I told you that some of the most recognizable faces in entertainment, fashion, and culture lived entire chapters of their lives unseen? Not because they wanted mystery, but because the world wasn't ready to look at them without turning them into headlines. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't just a list of names, it's a series of lives that reveal something deeper. Not transformation, but the cost of being truly seen. Hollywood has always loved a clean narrative, a beginning, a reveal, and a triumphant ending, a before and after that audiences can applaud. But real lives don't follow scripts that neatly. For transgender individuals, especially those in the public eye, visibility hasn't always meant celebration. Sometimes it meant exposure without consent, careers cut short, identities reduced to spectacle, and privacy treated like something disposable. Some people managed to survive by staying quiet. Others paid with everything they built, and some never got the time to rewrite their own stories at all. Caroline Cossey understood that risk from the very beginning. Growing up in England, she recognized early on that being seen could come with consequences. Beauty, for her, wasn't freedom, it was a kind of shield. It allowed her to move through spaces without being questioned too closely. Modeling gave her something even more valuable, a way to exist professionally without having to explain herself. For a while it worked. She built a career in fashion and television, even appearing in a James Bond film. But what mattered most wasn't the role, it was what it represented. She was there, participating, without disclaimers attached to her existence. That fragile balance shattered in the early 1980s when tabloids exposed her transgender history without her consent. The story wasn't treated as a violation, it was framed as scandal. Overnight, everything changed. Opportunities disappeared. The career she had carefully built became a cautionary tale. She stepped away, not out of shame, but because the environment had turned hostile. Later, she chose to reclaim her story publicly, not as a celebration, but as a correction. She refused to be reduced to a headline. Her life became a reminder that visibility without consent is not representation, it's harm. Barbara Stanwyck lived in a different kind of silence. Born into poverty and orphaned young, she learned early that survival depended on control. In Hollywood, where being watched was unavoidable, she mastered the art of being seen without being known. Her performances were powerful, layered, and commanding, but her personal life remained carefully guarded. Rumors circulated, as they often did, but she never confirmed or denied anything. In an era where even speculation could destroy careers, silence became her strategy. When she played a role coded as lesbian in the early 1960s, it reignited questions about her own life. But she stayed consistent. No explanations, no clarifications, just work. Her relationships, including a long partnership with her publicist, remained largely unspoken. Whether by choice or necessity, she maintained control over her narrative by refusing to participate in it publicly. Her legacy isn't just about her performances, it's about the power of withholding in a world that demands disclosure. Candy Darling approached life differently. She didn't want to hide, she wanted to belong. Born in New York at a time when language for identity was limited, she embraced glamour as a way in. She believed elegance could open doors that might otherwise remain closed. In the 1960s, she became part of the underground art scene, appearing in experimental films and building a persona rooted in classic Hollywood femininity. She wasn't interested in shock value, she wanted legitimacy. But her story didn't unfold the way she imagined. Illness came early, and with it a different kind of exposure. Even as her health declined, the attention didn't stop, it intensified. When she passed away at just 29, her life was already being turned into myth. She became an icon, but not in the way she had hoped. The future she wanted was never given the chance to exist. Jessica Alves represents a more modern kind of visibility, one shaped by media cycles and constant exposure. Before she was recognized for who she truly was, she was known for what she appeared to be. Her image was treated as a project, something to be modified and consumed. Cosmetic procedures became a way to gain control, but also a cycle that blurred identity with performance. When she eventually came out as a transgender woman, it reframed everything that came before. What people had interpreted as excess was in part an attempt to navigate expectations that never felt right. Her story highlights something important. Being visible doesn't mean being understood. Sometimes it just means being watched more closely. Hunter Schafer's journey feels quieter, but no less intentional. Growing up in a place with strict expectations, she learned early how to observe and adapt. Art became her outlet, and modeling offered a way into public life without immediate scrutiny. When she transitioned into acting, her approach remained the same, deliberate and controlled. Her work didn't rely on explanation. Instead, it allowed complexity to exist without simplification. Even when attention grew, she maintained authorship over her narrative, choosing when and how to speak. Her visibility wasn't accidental, it was curated, and that distinction changed everything. Carmen Carrera's experience shows how visibility can come with conditions. She first gained attention through performance, where identity could be exaggerated but not necessarily acknowledged. When she chose to live openly as a woman, the industry didn't immediately follow her lead. Recognition lagged behind reality. Even when opportunities appeared, they often came with limitations. Campaigns to include her in mainstream platforms gained support but faced resistance. Still, she continued forward, building her career on her own terms. Her story reflects persistence, not waiting to be accepted, but continuing regardless of whether acceptance comes. Christine Jorgensen's life unfolded at a time when even the concept of transition was unfamiliar to most people. What she hoped would be a private journey became a public phenomenon. Headlines turned her into a symbol, whether she wanted that role or not. When she tried to build a personal life, even that was denied to her. Legal systems refused to recognize her identity, and those decisions didn't just affect her, they set precedents that impacted others for years. Her story isn't just historical, it's foundational. It shows how individual lives can shape broader conversations, even when that responsibility is never chosen. James Dean remains one of the most intriguing figures in this conversation, not because of what he confirmed, but because of what he refused to define. In a time when labels were restrictive and expectations rigid, he resisted categorization altogether. His work hinted at emotional depth and ambiguity that audiences connected with, even if they couldn't fully articulate why. His life ended before those questions could be explored further, and in that absence, others filled in the gaps. His story became something interpreted rather than expressed. What remains is not a conclusion, but a question, one that still resonates. Elliot Page's journey is more recent, but it carries similar themes of endurance and eventual alignment. For years, success came with a quiet disconnect between public image and personal truth. Coming out initially brought some clarity, but not resolution. When he later shared his identity as a transgender man, it marked a turning point, not just personally, but publicly. The response was immediate and intense, shifting focus from his work to his identity. But he continued forward, choosing presence over retreat. His story isn't about reinvention, it's about staying. Chaz Bono's life has always been public, shaped by family fame and media attention. Even before understanding his own identity, he was already being watched. His journey toward alignment unfolded gradually, with each step bringing both relief and new challenges. When he transitioned, he chose to share that process openly, which brought visibility but also scrutiny. Participation in mainstream platforms introduced him to wider audiences, but also to criticism. Still, he remained present, continuing to live openly despite the pressure that came with it. April Ashley's story mirrors many of the same patterns seen before: privacy, exposure, and consequence. After building a life quietly, everything changed when her identity was revealed without consent. The fallout extended beyond her career into legal recognition, shaping laws that affected others long after. Andrea Peich's experience in fashion highlights the industry's complicated relationship with identity. Early success came through ambiguity, but clarity disrupted that balance. When she publicly embraced her identity, attention shifted from her work to her personal life. Despite that, she continued forward, building a career that didn't rely on explanation. Her presence became its own statement, not loud, but undeniable. Jazz Jennings' experience grew up in a completely different environment, one where visibility came before choice. Her life was documented from an early age, turning personal milestones into public content. While that visibility helped educate others, it also removed the possibility of privacy. As she grew older, the weight of that exposure became more apparent. Her experiences highlight the complexity of growing up in the public eye, especially when identity is part of the narrative. Patricio Manuel's story brings this conversation into sports, a space where identity is often tied to physical expectations. Her journey required both personal alignment and professional persistence. Even after making history, opportunities remained limited. Pete Burns lived at the intersection of identity and performance, using appearance as both expression and protection. Over time, that relationship became more complicated, especially as public attention shifted from his work to his image. Gigi Gorgeous's experience represents a new era entirely, one where identity unfolds online in real time. Her journey shows both the power and pressure of digital visibility. When everything is documented, nothing can be forgotten. Caitlyn Jenner's story is perhaps one of the most widely known, but that level of visibility came with its own challenges. Transitioning in the public eye meant that every step became part of a larger narrative shaped by media and audience interpretation. And then, returning full circle, Caroline Cossey's story reminds us of where this conversation began. Visibility can open doors, but without protection, it can also take everything away. Each of these lives tells a different version of the same truth. Being seen is not a simple act. It comes with consequences, negotiations, and sometimes sacrifices that aren't immediately visible. And maybe that's the real story here, not just who these people are, but what it took for them to exist in a world that often demanded more than it was willing to give.